We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. A playground for some. For others, it's where they make their living. But the sea's unpredictable. It can change in an instant.
The sea takes no prisoners. You always have to be prepared for the worst.
The sea is a beast. If you weren't anxious about it, you're not doing the right job.
The water was freezing.
I was thinking I was going to die.
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of over 5,000 ordinary people, ready to leave their jobs, their families, and race to our rescue.
Steady, steady. Go for it.
When the pagers go off, your heart stops. Is this a life and death situation?
In the water.
You're okay, pal.
Let go of the sail, mate. Let go of the sail.
Even that 1 second could make a huge difference to someone at home. 1 minute they've got a son or a daughter, the next minute they may not.
There we go. Emily, high five. Well done. Nice one.
I didn't think we'd get them back. I was just thinking, just please.
Are you the parents?
The lifeboat crew, without them, there's no doubt about it, we'd have lost our girls.
Equipped with their own cameras,
Am I switched on?
It's on.
the crews give us a unique insight into every call-out as only they see it.
Good stuff, that's it.
Speeding into the roughest storms, searching for people who may only have moments to live.
Gotcha.
For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
If something goes wrong, you could be the only person between them and death.
On the south coast of Britain, near the mouth of the Solent River and the gateway to Southampton docks, is the lifeboat station of Calshot.
So Calshot is a spit in the middle of the Solent and Southampton Water, kind of equidistant between Southampton, the Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, Lymington. So we're right in the middle of a very, very busy waterway.
Over 14 million tonnes of freight and 1.5 million passengers cruise just a few hundred metres past Calshot every year.
Southampton Docks is one of the busiest docks in the world, and that makes us one of the busiest lifeboat stations in the whole country.
The crew here launched 100 times last year, rescuing 94 people.
All sorts of dangers out there. Shipping is a major one. These big ships don't stop. They keep on going, so you don't want to get in their way. Obviously, having several coastlines and some of the geography we've got around here, there are a lot of shallow areas, a lot of sandbanks. So yeah, it is very easy to get caught out if you're not paying attention.
When that pager goes off, it could literally be anything. We've gone from sort of incidents involving leisure boats on one day to large commercial vessels on the next.
So you want to go from Calshot to Blackjack? Yeah.
The unique mix of dangers on their patch mean the Calshot crew are constantly training for any eventuality. One volunteer who's had to learn this stretch of water from scratch is 34-year-old Matt.
Pig?
Yeah.
He moved here with his wife, Holly, and 3 girls 5 years ago.
My house is definitely female orientated, so it's a very, very pink house. Lots of Barbie dolls.
That's Mummy's, is it? Mummy's tail. Even the dog is female.
Yeah, there's a few boy things. PlayStation maybe, football, but it's mainly dolls.
Since joining up, Matt trains twice every week and last year responded to the pager 80 times.
The station is definitely some of my time, if you like. You get on with each other and go to the pub afterwards and have a pint.
What's that?
A whirlpool.
A whirlpool? Oh no! What's that?
Daddy?
I'm in the whirlpool.
But at the same time, the most rewarding thing is being able to help people. We all want to do that extra bit and see if we can save a life.
July, a warm summer's evening. The pagers bring the Calshot volunteers running to the station.
Lifeboats launching. The assembly siren is about to sound and crew will be arriving. Please clear the area.
First information we heard was from the Coast Guard when we got to the station, and they just said there's a chap on a boat who's phoned us on 999 thinking that he might be having a stroke somewhere in Southampton Water.
A medical call is one of the most urgent a crew can receive. The station's Atlantic 85 lifeboat is readied for immediate launch.
As soon as you hear that it's a medical job, you sort of take a bit of a deep breath and you think, well, actually, we could make a difference here. This is important.
This isn't your run-of-the-mill shout where someone just needs a bit of assistance. This is someone who's very poorly. Medical jobs aren't uncommon, but personally I've never been to someone with a suspected stroke. The pressure is on to get to them as quickly as we can.
A stroke is caused when the blood supply to the brain is cut off. Any delay getting the casualty to treatment increases the chance of permanent damage or even death. All emergency services have been alerted to the distress call. The lifeboat is on the water in 12 minutes, carrying oxygen and full resuscitation kit.
With any job, our initial problem we've got to overcome is finding the casualty. He was able to speak on the radio, but he was in and out of consciousness. So as he was talking, we can try finding him using our direction finder.
They believe the casualty is upriver, but the onboard direction finder relies on him being conscious and able to use the radio.
Well, basically, it picks up the radio frequency. So when he's transmitting on a radio, on a 360 compass, it tells you the bearing that the transmission's coming from. But that only picks up when he's transmitting. So we had a rough idea where we were heading for, headed towards there, then trying to get him to communicate with us over the radio so that we could pinpoint him on the direction finder. You might start a conversation with him, and then he'll dip out of consciousness, then you'll get him back. It seemed like forever that we were trying to locate the casualty.
Over 3 miles upriver, and the crew still don't have the casualty's exact position.
I think in all of the jobs we do, time does seem to slow down somewhat, and sometimes you have to check yourself to say, actually, it's really not been very long. We've only been looking for this person for 2 or 3 minutes, whereas it might feel like 10.
Heading along the bearing of his last radio transmission, there's no sign of the casualty, just a boat drifting mid-channel.
As we approached, we saw a little fishing boat drifting. No one appeared to be on board. As we got closer, we saw the guy slumped under the steering wheel. He didn't look towards us as we came around, so at that point we realised that there was something, really not right with this guy.
The helm, Mike, puts 2 crew across onto the fishing boat to assess the casualty.
During our casualty care training, we categorise casualties in 2 ways, little sick or big sick. Little sick means we can help them out and they'll get better with our care. Big sick means they are going to need professional hospital care.
His level of response was somewhere between responding to voice and pain, drifting in and out of consciousness. This is a big sick casualty. What we want to try and do is prevent him getting worse and then rapidly evacuate him.
The crew give the casualty oxygen to try and stabilise him. An ambulance is waiting just 200 metres away on the shore, but the water's too shallow for the lifeboat to get to them.
We couldn't guarantee being able to carry him or stretcher him to shore. So the guaranteed way of getting this guy to hospital very quickly was by Coast Guard helicopter.
2 miles away in Lee on Solent, a helicopter is scrambled. Until it arrives, the only backup the crew have is the station's second smaller D-class lifeboat.
By the D-class coming to assist, straight away it gives you more pairs of hands. So when we had to transfer the casualty, because he wasn't particularly stable, we needed people on his vessel as well as on the lifeboat.
The only way to safely evacuate the casualty is for the helicopter to winch him off the bigger Atlantic lifeboat. But getting him off the small fishing boat and onto the lifeboat is a tricky manoeuvre.
Anytime you need to transfer a casualty from one boat to another, there's always a potential that a gap opens up between the two boats, and whether it's a casualty or a crew member could get entrapped in between.
With the light fading fast and the helicopter 10 minutes away, the crew manoeuvre the severely ill casualty onto the lifeboat.
So we moved him across from his vessel onto the Atlantic. It ended up that he was sort of sat on top of me in the front of the Atlantic. At that point, I wasn't looking after him in terms of medical. That was being done by Andy at that time. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to chat to him. You just put yourself in their shoes and you think, actually, you'd like to have someone chatting to you. You'd like to have somebody just reassuring you. And that's something you can't train for.
The helicopter is now inbound. To winch the casualty up safely, the lifeboat must be travelling at the same speed as the helicopter. As they accelerate, the crew's concern for the casualty grows.
Once we transferred him onto our lifeboat, he did appear to start going downhill. Whether that was because of the post-recovery shock, whether it was a little bit of fear because he's about to get winched up into a helicopter. You've also got the helicopters overhead. It's particularly noisy, and there's also a lot of downdraft.
30 minutes after the call came in, the helicopter arrives.
There is definitely a sense of relief amongst some of the crew that a professional medic is now with us. We are there as technically as first aiders to get to the scene quickly and to help people out in the first instance, and any backup is greatly received.
Travelling at 15 knots with the helicopter flying just meters above, Helm Mike must make sure the winchman can land safely on board. A scenario the crew train for but rarely put into practice.
It's a difficult manoeuvre for the crew. It involves the lifeboat positioning itself under the helicopter, not the helicopter positioning itself over us. I am doing nothing but looking at the winchman. I'm relying on my crew to direct me and look after a casualty. So it's a tense moment, and it's one where also there's a guy dangling out of a helicopter who's in an inherently risky position. When the winchman lands on the deck, he's connected to the helicopter still. So we can't drive away, we have to maintain that position until such a time as the winchman has cleared his line.
It's never something you'll get used to, even when you're doing it on training. Every single time you do it, the adrenaline is running.
This time, a life hangs in the balance, and the winchman orders an immediate lift.
Once the helicopter has taken the casualty from us, I suppose there's a mix of emotions. Everyone can relax slightly. You know that the guy's in the best possible care. You've done what you can, you've done your best, and now it's up to somebody else to make sure he pulls through.
The hardest thing for us on the lifeboat is quite often we won't know the outcome. We'll do everything we can do, get them evacuated, but after that it's not often that we'll actually know the outcome.
Just 45 minutes after he first called for help, the casualty is on his way to Southampton General Hospital's trauma centre. Doctors discovered a severe bleed on the brain. They administered life-saving intravenous drugs. 29 days later, the casualty was discharged.
I think there is absolutely a sense of pride that the crew did what they were trained to do, they did it well, and nothing went wrong. And that's a great feeling. he was in a sticky spot. He needed help, and help wouldn't have been forthcoming where he was. So yeah, he's absolutely lucky to be here still. As a team of people, you know, hospital, helicopter, us, Coast Guard, between us, we saved his life.
To save lives at sea is why the RNLI was founded back in 1824. But today, for over 5,000 individual lifeboat volunteers, there are many different reasons why they pull on the yellow wellies week in, week out, whatever the weather.
I really, really do love that it's an automatic community.
I can do coffee, who wants tea?
And I know that sounds cheesy and that's most probably what most people talk about, but everybody's got something different to offer.
I'm not really that sure how I ended up joining. I think Mum and Dad kind of set me down for something to do when I was like 17 years old. I wasn't like the best behaved kid, and yeah, I think they thought if I go down there I might be able to straighten me up a wee bit, and it kind of has,
I'm really proud to have the opportunity to go out and help people in trouble. My aunt, many years ago, and her friends drowned in a boating accident, and no one at the time was there to help them. I like the idea that in similar situations, I and the team can go out and make a difference to people and actually make sure they come home.
That's where the boat used to come out.
Yeah.
The lifeboat has always been in my life. I joined when I was 17 in the same way that my grandfather joined when he was 17 in the 1950s. My dad joined in the 1970s, as did my brother a good few years ago, and then more recently my sister joined as well. So it's a big family thing for us.
The amazing thing is my kids are so proud of me. It's crazy. You know, I saw having a big job, a big house, a big car. You know, this will be something my kid will remember and say, oh, my dad is this, is that. No, my kid go to school and say, you know what? My dad is part of the RNLI crew, and they're so proud of it.
A lot of people do question, why do you go out in rough seas for people you've never met for no money at all? And sometimes you even do question yourself why you do it. But no, I'd definitely never give it up, that's for sure.
When the volunteers at Thurso answer the pager's call, they put to sea from the most northerly lifeboat station on the British mainland.
Thurso is positioned right at the very top of Scotland.
The nearest sort of big shopping town is like 105 miles away, so if you want to go for a KFC or a McDonald's, you've 105 miles to go to get it, and then 105 miles to come back with it.
One thing this far-flung corner of Scotland isn't short of is lifeboat crews ready to put their lives on the line. They have received 17 awards for gallantry since the first lifeboat arrived in 1860. Today's modern 7-class lifeboat is located in Scrabster Harbour, one of the busiest ports in northern Scotland.
It's certainly a working harbour. There's a lot of local fishing boats. Supply ships come in. There's a ferry that comes in. So it's quite a busy port in general.
The crew keep watch over 60 miles of rugged coastline, one of the largest and most remote patches of any of the 238 stations across the UK and Ireland.
Our shouts vary from towing fishing boats, towing a lot of yachts, searching, medevacs.
It's a challenge every time you go out because you don't know what you're going to.
We can get 4 seasons in one day. Even in the summer, it's one of that sort of places. You can go from glorious sun to hail to, you know, quite stormy weather.
You'll see a lot of cradle buoys. It's the smaller inshore vessels. If something happens to them here, if they get a foul propeller, there's not a lot of room here for making mistakes. It can be very dangerous. It can catch you out, yeah.
Late April, midday. The Coast Guard call out the Thurso crew. A male kayaker has set off a personal locator beacon 14 miles away. A PLB is a small emergency transmitter set off when life is in danger. When triggered, it gives a satellite position but little other information.
When a PLB goes off, there's definitely a sense of urgency there, I would say similar to hearing a mayday, because when it goes off, it's an individual that's in trouble, so the casualty could be away from his kayak. You're wanting to get there and get on scene as soon as you can.
The sea temperature at this time of year is less than 10 degrees. If he's in the water, he could succumb to hypothermia in less than half an hour. Even at a top speed of 25 knots, the crew are still 30 minutes away.
You're always thinking, how long have they been in the water? What are they equipped with? What's the conditions like on scene? You know, things can happen, situations could get worse, you know. There's always potential of knocks to heads, or you could become cold, lose the ability to sort of swim, things like that.
To find a kayaker in the sea is like finding a needle in a haystack, really. Oh, it could get up to hours, aye.
After 30 minutes, the crew arrive at the PLB's location.
We initially spotted the kayak floating about. Some of the crew were looking in binoculars trying to sort of find him because we couldn't see him. We actually hooted the horn on the lifeboat to see if we could get attracted attention to maybe start waving.
The 7-class lifeboat can't get any closer to shore, so the crew launched their onboard inflatable Y-boat.
The kayak's bright yellow, it's not too bad to see, but a person or the kayaker that set up themselves, you know, they can be very hard to spot.
Yankee 166, Yankee 166, there's a lifeboat coming over.
There's a lifeboat, Yankee 166, over.
Yeah, it's just sitting above where the kayak's sitting.
All received, over. He's just sitting above the kayak.
We then spotted him and he was up, huddled behind a bit of a rock. Options for sort of rescue for himself was limited, really, as it was too far for him to swim to anywhere. The rocks behind him were too steep for him to climb up and get himself to any safety, so they're pretty much relying on either a lifeboat or a helicopter.
Get his throw back out there ready in case we need him.
Although they have located him, they have no idea what condition the casualty's in. Standing between him and rescue is 20 meters of shallow water, strewn with rocks lurking beneath the surface.
Start making your way down the rock.
There was a bit of swell as we're approaching the rocks.
Looks like it's down towards the water's edge.
Yeah. There's not much room for error, so once the timing was right, it was go in and get him on the Y-boat as quickly as possible. You okay? Quick, come on, on you get. That's you, on you get.
You fit him well?
You okay?
I'm okay, yes.
Yeah, good.
You've been there a while, have you?
I must have been about 3/4 of an hour now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was struggling not to slide back into the sea on the different
yeah.
Very, very slippery.
Once we got him on board and found out he was safe and well and fit, we asked if he wanted to retrieve his kayak at the moment, or did he want to back to the lifeboat for treatment, but he was quite happy to retrieve his kayak at the time.
Your PLB work, though.
66-year-old Ben, an experienced sea kayaker, had been on a solo trip along the coast.
I was planning a really relaxing day. I was going to have a gentle paddle taking 2 or 3 hours, and there's a very fine puffin colony halfway along. I have a great respect for the sea. It's spent quite a bit of time getting my boat ready and getting myself ready, and I take a lot of equipment. The weather was good. I wouldn't have gone otherwise. There was an east wind, perhaps force 3, but ever so often there'd be 1 or 2 big swells. I was probably done about 3/4 of the trip. I think a big swell just came in at the wrong time and broke, and I remember thinking, I don't want to be here. And then I didn't manage to save myself from capsizing. It just washes you about as if you were a sock in a washing machine. You know, you can't do anything about it. And I was immediately worried by this being on my own, so I decided the only safe option was to abandon the boat and climb out onto the rocks myself. And got myself perched rather precariously and got the PLB out and activated the PLB. And I saw the lights flashing and I thought, right, that's good. They should hopefully have picked the signal up. If I didn't have my kit, I wouldn't have survived very long. I'd have been very cold very quickly in that cold water, and I wouldn't have had any means of calling for help, so I would have very quickly have perished, probably within 10-15 minutes.
If there's any kayakers going about, I would certainly get a personal location beacon, because if something does happen, then we will find you. It ended good. That's what we like. The PLB certainly saved this gentleman's life.
Over 650 miles away on the mouth of the River Bandon is Kinsale, one of the most southerly stations in Ireland. The town has harboured a fishing fleet since the 1600s and is famed for its seafood.
We have an awful lot of fishing boats in the marina and lobster pots around the area. Also, if you go up the river, we have a number of oyster beds and oyster trestles that go up the Bandon River.
The name Kinsale means tide head, and the lifeboat crew here face a unique set of dangers, guarding the waters where the Celtic Sea meets the Bandon River.
It's not as calm as normal rivers. There's quite a strong underflow current, so you can get swept off your feet quite quickly. Some days you could have nearly 4 to 5 knots of tide in certain areas. It is something that you do have to be careful of.
Kinsale Lifeboat Station opened in 2003 and has over 20 volunteers, sacrificing their time for the lives of others. 55-year-old photographic printer Hetty first picked up the pager 12 years ago.
One of the reasons I joined the RNLI is because I am a sailor. I realised that everybody can be caught out. The sea can be very calm, but it also can be unforgiving, wild, powerful. It can change in an instant. I had a boat fall on top of me once. I was under the water for almost 2 minutes. I was drowning. Your whole life passes in front of you. You remember everything you've done in the past. I thought this was it. I'm done. The first thing you think of is there anybody coming to help me? I didn't have the RNLI then. I was in another country. When you know that there's no lifeboat there, that nobody can help you, you think, I'm going to give it one last go. And I was just very fortunate to save my own life. You know, when you almost drown, you get a second chance. You want to make every day special. You look at the sky, you breathe, you breathe, you breathe. It was one of the reasons I joined the RNLI, because I felt we could make a difference.
February. Clear skies have sent temperatures plunging. The Kinsale volunteers are paged.
I just arrived home and made breakfast for my kids. They wanted their pink pancakes, as they normally do on a Sunday morning. Just sitting down to have my own breakfast and a cup of tea, and the pagers went off. Jumped up, ran to the car, made our way down to the station, was just suiting up, and we were told that it was a horse that had got into difficulty.
Going to an animal rescue, you're worried about the owner. If it's your livelihood, if you're a farmer, and it's your cows that are in the water, you're going to do your best to get them out. 9 times out of 10, the owner becomes the casualty.
Within 10 minutes, they launched their Atlantic 75 B-class into the River Bandon and head upstream. Although the initial call is to a horse in trouble, there's a real danger any people trying to help may also be at risk.
That area there is very, very dangerous. The current, when the tide is moving either way, is very strong on the way in and very strong on the way out. You have a huge body of water being pushed into a small area, so it becomes almost like a natural pressure water.
The tide is flooding upriver. It helps push the crew to the scene of the call-out in just a few minutes. But now it's their biggest danger. They're going to be racing it to rescue the trapped casualty.
The water was rising, and it was rising fast. Another 30 minutes, and the water would have risen about 10 feet.
We could see that the horse was up to its belly in water and people standing on oyster trestles next to it and trying to pull it and push it in certain directions, and we're not having any luck. We didn't want to bring the boat in too far because it could have spooked the horse with the engines and potentially put it in a situation where the horse could have kicked somebody. And a horse kicking somebody is not the best of things at any point, but kicking somebody when they're in water is probably even worse. Jonathan and myself decided to disembark the boat and go in and assess the situation.
News has spread about the accident in the town. A crowd has gathered on the shore. Several people have entered the fast-flowing water to try and help.
You could see there was people who were relieved when we arrived, thinking that we were the saviours gonna get this horse out of the water. Whereas Michael and myself looking at each other saying, you know, where do we begin? How are you getting on?
The only way I could approach the horse was from behind, and you should never actually walk behind a horse in case they do kick you. The horse was quite tired and cold at this stage, and I could see him looking at me, turning his head to me and going, "What are you doing here? Who's this guy with a big white helmet on him?" It was quite funny when you find out that the horse's name was Paddy. You feel like you're talking to a guy sitting at a bar having a pint of Guinness with you, saying, "How you doing, Paddy?"
That's the leg between two bits. The rebar, we're going to probably have to cut the rebar to separate it a bit. Yeah. To put underwater.
Paddy has his legs stuck in a metal frame used to farm oysters. It's made from reinforced steel rods, or rebar.
Have you got any cutting gear with you?
We do. We have bolt cutters on board.
Decent ones that will go through. Get those out. I think that
we can get them out anyway. We'll have a look.
We kind of said to ourselves, "Oh my goodness, we're looking at rebar." Our bolt cutters would not cut rebar at all. Angle grinder might cut rebar at inch-thick steel. Yeah, not our bolt cutters, unfortunately.
It's been nearly 20 minutes since the call came in. The tide is still rising. While the helm on the boat keeps an eye on the people in the water, the rest of the crew need a plan to free Paddy fast.
It was in February. The water would have been freezing, so the people around, they were starting to get very nervous for the horse. Is Michael going to be able to do something? Can the RNLI do something?
The water was now on top of the back of the horse, and the horse just had its neck out of the water. That was where we were kind of saying, look, this might not turn out as we want it.
The owner was very worried about his horse from the instant that we got there, and had actually almost given up, and was very upset himself in a sad manner as opposed to an angry manner.
The horse's owner, Paul, had been out riding with his daughter, Lauren, when Paddy got stuck. They had never been to that stretch of river before and had no idea that the oyster trestles lay just under the surface.
Most Sundays we was go to the beach with them, you know, just to give them a wash in the water. The salt water was very good for their legs. That day in February, just things went a bit wrong on us, you know. I could just feel Paddy got a bit tight underneath me. He stopped and he neighed. And when he neighed, I knew I was in trouble.
I heard Paddy neigh and I got really scared and frightened because I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know what happened to him. So I was like, we need to get help really quickly.
We tried to lift his back legs out of the cage and we couldn't do it.
I was like, there mightn't be a chance of him coming home with us.
We were powerless. We couldn't do nothing. He was just so tight. There was absolutely nothing that we could do.
The river is minutes away from submerging Paddy completely. The crew are running out of time to get him free. Michael has one last idea.
Some horses can be almost conditioned into if you hit the back of their knee that they'll lift as if they're being shoed again. So I put my hand down and I hit the back of his knee and he just lifted his foot up a small bit. And when I did it a second time, he lifted it further and I was able to put my knee under his shin, effectively, and hold him there for a second. We were able to lift his leg just ever so gently over the top of the bar while we moved the oyster trestle, and he basically almost stepped out of it.
Yeah, we have a clear way around me.
This way.
Around my back and in.
With minutes to spare, Paddy is free. All that remains is to guide him back to shore, avoiding any of the other oyster trestles.
There wasn't any hope in hell that I was going to be able to ride that horse back in, but I would have made a good photograph of it.
Oh, he's up. You clear again? He's clear.
I felt very cold when I got out, and as I walked up towards the road, there was people there with towels, there was people there with tea, there was people there with coffee, there was a fierce gathering after. It was unbelievable. When I see that horse walking up and people around him, it was just brilliant. It was the only tears came to my eyes, I'll be honest.
Definitely a job well done. It was a big pat on the back moment for Michael.
No hassle. Sure, anytime.
It won't be one I'd forget too easily. It's not every day you go to rescue a horse.
I think we just got lucky. We got lucky with an unlucky situation, so kind of balanced it out.
Stuck my hand on it. Push it back. To start calling him the horse whisperer, is it?
Apparently I have been called the horse whisperer a couple of times, but I'm not going to stick with that one.
Lifeboat crews across the UK and Ireland come from all walks of life and sign up for many different reasons. But the one thing they all have in common is that they know when the pager sounds, the only thing to expect is the unexpected.
Part of the buzz with the RNLI is once your pager goes off, you have never got any idea of what that job's going to be until you're ready at the station. I suppose that is part of the way of life with the RNLI. It's the unexpected. It's a great adrenaline rush. It's great to keep you excited to continue with it, really, and that's why you never really get bored of it.
The unique thing with working at sea is it's like working in an office that's constantly moving. It's the only job where the weather can play a massive part on what you're going to do.
When you're heading out to a shout, you always hope for the best, assume the worst. The day that you don't is the day you'll get caught out.
One of the most extreme situations was a shout we went to with two fishermen. Their boat had run aground on the rocks, and the only way I could describe it was a bit like a bomb had gone off, and the boat had exploded everywhere. There was just bits of boat everywhere, and you knew these guys were in the water somewhere.
I don't think anybody's seen it all before at sea. I don't think anybody knows what's coming next, or the next big shock that we're going to get. It's never ending.
A freezing night in January, 9 p.m.
Attention, attention. Lifeboat launching. The assembly siren is about to sound.
Back on the south coast of England, the volunteers of Calshot have been paged.
It was a cold January night. We don't often get called out in darkness in the middle of January. So yeah, really had no idea.
All the crew know is that there's a vessel in distress on the notorious Bramble sandbank near the Isle of Wight.
It is harder working at night just because obviously you've lost that real sense of what's going on around you. Suddenly you're looking at navigation lights on boats rather than just seeing a boat. It's quite a hazardous area in the shallows that we've got, so your situational awareness is certainly diminished at night.
Calshot's Atlantic 85 launches towards the port of Cowes on the Isle of Wight.
But I just remember looking across to Cowes and sort of going, the bright lights had gone.
We soon realised that actually what we could see was just a black hole where Cowes, the town, should be. Then suddenly the gravity of the situation dawned on us a little when we kind of saw the scale of this thing.
Blocking out the lights of Cowes, a 50,000-ton cargo ship has lost control and run aground on the sandbank in the middle of the Solent.
The Atlantic is 8.5 metres compared to a 180-metre vessel. I think the biggest thing is thinking, what are we expected to do? There's no way that your 8.5-metre rib is going to have much effect. It's the length of 2 football pitches approximately. So if you imagine one car parked on 2 football pitches, that's about the comparison.
The feeling I had when we saw this thing, I think it can be summed up with one of the guys that was on board that just turned around and looked at me and said, I think we're going to need a bigger boat.
Both Calshot's lifeboats joined the harbour master, 2 tugboats and a Coast Guard helicopter attempting to help the stricken ship.
Some news just in, a car transporter, the Hogue Osaka, is reported to have run aground at the Solent off Cowes in the Isle of Wight. A helicopter and 2 lifeboats have been seen near the ship, which is listing.
Roger, your task to the cargo carrier Hogue Osaka. Beware the vessel has a lot of rope in the water to the aft of the vessel.
All we could see was that it had approximately a 45-degree list on it, so it looked very precarious.
Leaning over at a dangerous angle, the massive cargo ship could roll over at any moment, putting the lives of anyone on board in imminent danger. As well as Calshot, lifeboats from Yarmouth and Cowes have also been called out to try and evacuate the crew on board.
If it is safe to do so, would it be possible to winch down and commence removing crew from the vessel and then placing removed crew members onto the ALB lifeboat? Over. For a total of 24 persons on board.
It became apparent there were people that weren't accounted for. They were known to still be on the ship. So we started to sort of have a search around the vessel, looking in sort of companion ways and around the decks and other areas that were sort of generally inaccessible.
I think it was absolutely time critical for the guys that were on board. It must be a scary place to be, sat on a boat, with a list on it like that. So very scary for them.
The priority now is to find the ship's 24 crew members and get them to safety. A Coast Guard helicopter starts winching up anyone who can get to the top side of the ship, while the lifeboats scour the decks facing the water.
We had no idea of the state of the crew on board. We saw one chap kind of shouting for help close to the front of the vessel. We saw another chap shouting for help along one side of the vessel, on the kind of downward side, and we saw a few people through the bridge where we could look through from one side of the bridge to the other, kind of uphill, trying to help themselves out.
Looks like somebody slumped in their chair, isn't it? That man in yellow in orange overalls, didn't they? Yeah.
When we got round the front of the boat, we saw a chap holding on to a capstan on like the mooring deck, shouting for help. We repositioned the boat to get a better view of him, and then he disappeared.
To make matters worse, anyone falling into the water on this side of the ship risks being dragged back under it by the strength of the incoming tide.
It was one of the chaps on board, fairly eagle-eyed, then saw the back pocket of his overalls poking out through a fairlead where he'd slid the length of the deck. Luckily for us, though, very close to the water now, so we were able to kind of pluck him over and get him on board.
The crew safely pull their first casualty on board, while the search for the rest of the crew intensifies. There are still over 18 unaccounted for.
Oh yeah, there's a guy down to nearer to the window now. Yeah. But he looks as if he could be making his way this way. Yeah, he's trying to find somewhere to clip onto, I think, so he can pull up.
I think they were starting to almost panic a little bit, maybe thinking that the boat was going to go over completely.
So we'd seen this guy there for a good few minutes and tried to communicate with him to stop, to stay where he was. We're wearing helmets underneath a listing ship in the middle of the night. There's a language barrier. We can't really hear them, they can't really hear us. We knew at this point a helicopter was coming that could easily winch him away.
There he goes. He's in.
We just went for it, we just went to grab him. There was nothing else we could do. You know, we couldn't sit there and watch him try and swim to us. We had to go and get him. By the time we got there, which was, you know, seconds, he was already getting submerged and pulled underneath the vessel, to the point where we actually picked him up. All that was visible was his hands above the water. The chap that jumped from the side of the vessel, he was submerged 5 seconds after he was in the water, and we plucked him out, you know, 2 seconds later. Yeah, he was. That was a life saved that night.
After 6 hours at sea, the lifeboats and Coast Guard helicopter rescued all 24 crew members, with no injuries to anyone on board. As it left Southampton port carrying luxury cars to Germany, the Hogue Osaka developed a list of over 40 degrees. The ship lost steerage and propulsion and drifted onto Bramblebank.
The captain and the pilot on the Hogue Osaka have been in and out of the port of Southampton hundreds of times, and you know, the captain would have sailed around the world for years, and yet, you know, things happen that are out of your control, and you need to make sure that you are best placed to deal with those when they do happen.
A 100 miles east along the coast from Calshot is the seaside resort of Eastbourne. With its famous pier and beaches, the town has drawn visitors here since the Victorian era.
I mean, Eastbourne as a coastal town is very, very popular. It's a beautiful place. We get ribbed a lot about Eastbourne. It's an old people's town, but there's an awful lot going on in Eastbourne for the youngsters. We've got Pevensey Bay, Norman's Bay, very popular with windsurfers, kite surfers, kayakers. We've got the harbour, which is very, very popular with the boating fraternity locally. The Dutch, the Belgians, the Germans, French, they flood across in the summer months.
It's got everything. It's got the sea, it's got the countryside, so I think we're very lucky.
Eastbourne's Tamar-class all-weather lifeboat is skippered and maintained by one of the RNLI's full-time crew, coxswain and mechanic Mark. As a full-time employee, Mark must never be more than 5 miles from the station whilst on call.
Making a difference is, I think, why you do it. It is one hell of a commitment. There's no two ways about it. It's a commitment for your social life, your home life. Your whole world almost has to revolve around it. It's just that, getting out there on the boat, doing the job, and getting people home safe.
June. Strong winds, big swells, and worse coming. Storm Miguel is sweeping up through Europe. Just across the channel, tragedy strikes. French lifeboat Jacques Morisseau was responding to a fishing boat in distress.
It was a Friday evening, and unfortunately, looking at the news, a French lifeboat had capsized on a rescue, and sadly seeing that, 3 lifeboat crew over there had been lost. We're all in the same business of saving lives at sea, and to see that they'd gone out there to try and rescue or find a stricken fisherman, and then the boat itself ends up in trouble is heartbreaking.
I think it gives you a wake-up call. I think most of us on the RNLI think we're all indestructible, but an event like that will give you a wake-up call to actually say, you know what, it can go wrong, and it does go wrong.
I'd just been reading the news article about the incident involving the French lifeboat, and the pager went off.
We were having to go out the same night and the same storm, but at the end of the day, we've got the job to do, and we'll still go out and do the job.
It was Very windy, with winds due to be up to 42 to 50 miles per hour. So I was conscious that the weather was closing in and it was getting worse.
I thought to myself, perhaps it's a windsurfer, kite surfer that's gone out because they like to go out in the extreme conditions. So here it was a yacht, was somewhat of a surprise.
Storm Miguel has landed in the UK and is expected to intensify over the next hour.
A colleague of mine walked past the station at the time and he said, are you going to that yacht that's around the corner? I was like, yeah, and his words were, well, it's rather you than me, I don't fancy that one.
Multiple 999 calls are coming in from the public about a yacht in trouble near Pevensey Bay.
We knew we were up against it time-wise with the tide more than anything. The weather worsening obviously doesn't help, but the tide was the real issue.
2 minutes after launching, the crew find the yacht just 200 metres from shore. As well as the approaching storm, the crew are now also racing the outgoing tide. Already there's barely enough water for the lifeboat to get in close.
We was pretty surprised to see how close inshore he was. The vessel was being thrown all over the place.
It was very, very shallow there. We only had half a metre below us, so we wouldn't like to have guessed how much he had underneath him.
We'll throw you a tow line! Make up, then take up the anchor!
There's loads of safe anchor points off of Eastbourne. Unfortunately, this yacht had just gone far too close to shore. He obviously hadn't checked his chart to see that where he was actually very, very shallow. And it's not a suitable anchor spot, being soft sand as well.
You cannot stay here! You end up on the beach!
In that weather condition, with that wind coming through, it was no doubt before he would be washed up on the beach.
The weather conditions are getting worse! You've got 50-mile-an-hour winds coming through!
The only way to get the yacht and its skipper to safety is to tow it into deeper waters.
We need to go stern to him to pass him a tow line. So in order to do that, we're putting our propellers in shallower water, so the stern of the boat is in shallower water than we want. But we had no other option. We could see that his anchor was just about holding, and he was rocking some. He was on his own, he was ill-equipped for the weather, he was barefoot, with no life jacket on.
With the tide ebbing and only half a metre of water below them, the lifeboat is dangerously close to bottoming out. But the crew must get in even closer to get the tow line across to the yacht.
The danger of getting too close to a vessel is never knowing what the next wave is going to do or how big it's going to be. There's a rule of 7 we go by the sea. The 7th one is always bigger than the last 6. If you get too close and a big wave gets underneath you, then it's going to push your 40-ton boat onto his. Andy initially threw the line to the casualty, and at the time a roller came in and the gentleman was unable to catch the tow. Andy pulled it in pretty rapidly, recalled and got ready for another throw.
There's a couple of times he was very, very close to going over the rails of his boat. So that was our main fear. The boat itself is cosmetic. The person's life is what we're there for.
Threw it again. The gentleman actually caught it.
He's lost it!
Another breaker came in, sort of slipped through his hands. By then, things were getting to the point where we were becoming aware of the situation that we needed to get that tow line secure.
Even though time is against you, you still can't rush. You've just got to get everyone reorganised, get the boat repositioned and go back in and have another go.
Finally, the casualty manages to secure the tow line. But the yacht's anchor is still stuck fast in the seabed, which is preventing the lifeboat from towing the vessel into deeper water.
At that point, we decided it was too dangerous, and we told him just to dump the anchor and let it go free. Loss of an anchor against the loss of your boat, I think it's a no-brainer what you've got to do.
Let it go! Now, let
So that's what he did. He dropped the anchor, and then we towed him out into deeper water.
There you go, Dean.
I think the relief was, getting him out of the surf, getting him out of off the sandbar, getting him out into deeper water, and then, you can have a sigh of relief. I mean, the job's still not over. You've still got to get him into the harbour entrance at low water with the breaking water across the entrance, but compared to getting him out of there, massive relief just to get him out into safe water.
The yacht had sought shelter from the elements in Pevensey Bay.
If we was called an hour later, I don't think it would have been to take a boat under tow. It would have been to try and get somebody out of the water, because that guy would not have been on that boat an hour later. He was lucky that people called in for him, because I don't think he was going to. And I don't think he had the means to. So he was lucky people were watching for him. I don't think the fisher went down as a life saved, but had it been any longer, or that chap went in the water, it would either be a life saved or a life lost, I don't think my partner was quite aware of what had happened in France that day. I think if she did know, she'd be a bit more worried about me going. Nothing will change my view of going out to sea. I'm here for the long run.
Back over in Kinsale, Paddy the horse is showing no ill effects after his close call on the River Bandon.
Paddy's in tip-top shape. He's in great form. He's having the summer off, eating plenty of grass. I love him. I love him. He's just such a character of ours. I took Paddy back to the water probably 3 weeks after that accident, just to see how he'd cope, just to refresh his mind, and there was no issue. He went straight back in.
Now he's not frightened at all. He's back to normal. He's doing everything perfectly fine now. He doesn't have any more cuts or anything like that.
We all love Paddy in the RNLI station. He's become a member of the family.
The RNLI did an awful lot for me and Paddy and my family.
Say thank you so much for saving him, because he's definitely one of my favourite horses.
Hey lads, thanks very much again.
I think you always react slightly differently when children are involved.
You're like, okay, I can wake up from this, this isn't real, this can't be real.
And I heard it was a shark attack, and I was like, shark attack?
Has he bitten his arm off, or has it severed his arm?
This was the quickest lifeboat launch I'd ever been on, because we had to.